All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Campbell, Vice President of Content and Client Relationships with the Food Institute, and welcome to our webinar, Automating Food Production with AI-Enabled Robots. To start, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's webinar, and that is Chef Robotics. Chef is the first company to have commercialized a scalable AI-driven food robotics solution. With over 60 million servings made in production, Chef leverages Chef OS, an AI platform for food manipulation, to offer a robotics as a service solution that helps industry-leading food companies increase production volume and meet demand. Headquartered in San Francisco, California, Chef aims to empower humans to do what humans do best by accelerating the advent of intelligent machines. And please visit chefrobotics.ai to learn more. Now, let's take care of a little housekeeping. A recording of this webinar will be shared with all registrants and attendees. We will also be sharing the slide deck within that email. Please just allow a few days for processing and keep an eye on your inbox for that email. And finally, time permitting, we will be hosting a Q&A session at the end of the webinar here, so please feel free to add your questions in the Q&A tab on the side of your screen. Now, I'll hand it over to FI CEO Brian Choi to introduce today's guests. So, over to you, Brian.
Thanks, Chris. We are pleased to welcome Rajat Bhageria, founder and CEO of Chef Robotics. Prior to Chef, Rajat was founder and managing partner at Prototype Capital, a pre-seed venture capital fund investing in founders who apply new technology to old industries. Before that, Rajat was a founder and CEO of Third Eye, where he led a team to build a product that empowers the visually impaired by recognizing what's in front of them. Third Eye was ultimately sold. Rajat has written a book about education reform, published a scientific paper in electrical engineering, and written for Forbes about entrepreneurship. He has a master's degree in robotics and machine learning from the University of Pennsylvania and a bachelor's in economics from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. We are also thrilled to welcome Virgilio Felix, Chief Operations Officer at Cafe Spice. Virgilio is a proven manufacturing and operations executive with a distinguished career spanning over 2 decades in leadership roles across food manufacturing and retail sectors. As Chief Operating Officer of Cafe Spice LLC, he has been instrumental in driving strategic growth, operational excellence, and business expansion. As a results-driven leader, Virgilio has successfully spearheaded large-scale projects, including constructing state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities, implementing ERP systems, automation, and strengthening market positioning through strategic partnerships. He has expertise in lean manufacturing, process optimization, and cost reduction. Known for his ability to build and lead high-performing teams, Virgilio excels in developing innovative solutions, streamlining operations, and fostering strong supplier and investor relationships. And with that, I'll hand it over to Rajat to get things started. Take it away, Rajat.
Thanks, Brian. And thanks, everyone, for joining. We're going to do a quick little introduction on Chef and Cafe Spice, and then we'll kind of open it up to a panel. So let's just start with a quick introduction on Chef. I think when we started the company, what we were trying to solve is, we would go to a lot of our prospect plants, and we would see, frankly, hundreds of humans who are kind of doing these redundant motions in a cold room. It's usually 34 degrees, 35 degrees. It's really hard to hire. It's really hard to retain talent. Oftentimes, we'd see multiple 100% turnovers per year. And so what we found is that a lot of these manufacturers weren't able to actually kind of keep up with their demand, right? They basically had excess demand. The way this manifested is oftentimes they had lines that were unfilled. And that's kind of what we said, hey, maybe we can solve this. We also saw a big problem with giveaway and basically yield, right? We would often find that our customers would overspend and overdeposit on average. And basically that's leading to food wastage and, of course, loss of profit. And so we said, okay, well, how do we kind of solve this problem? What we discovered is that, if we peer into the future 5 to 10 years down the line, it's something that a lot of our customers have told us they don't imagine humans actually wanting to do this job at all. It felt existential. Some of our early customers basically said, look, if we don't solve this problem, then we might not be around, right? It's an existential threat. And basically the way to solve this is really software and AI. Now, you might think, okay, well, why do you need software and AI? Well, the thing is that there is actually a lot of traditional automation that exists, but the thing is it's not very flexible. So, for example, there's a lot of depositors that the food industry has had for the last 40, 50 years. These depositors are actually really good if they can do the job. The question is, can they do the job you need? They're very good at low mix manufacturing. So if you're making Coca-Cola all day long, or chips all day long, or a single deposit of mac and cheese, great, get a depositor. The thing is that they have long cleaning times, Frequently, you can't even do the ingredients. So imagine for Cafe Spice, we need to do a curry with meat suspended in it. Dispensers and depositors just can't do it. Even if you want to do things like rice, you can break the grain frequently. So sometimes the dispensers just don't work. Sometimes, even if they can work, it takes too long to clean them. And therefore, they're not really tenable as a viable solution for high mix food manufacturers, right? So what high mix food manufacturers tend to do is use people. Now, again, people are great. They can literally do any ingredient at any portion size into any tray. They're very flexible, but they don't want to do the work. It's cold. You're doing the redundant motions for 8 hours. You have to do overtime. Sometimes they don't show up for work. They're not dependable. And it's hard to scale. Like if you want to open up a new plant, like Virgilio had to do, I mean, you have to hire dozens of people. That's very hard. So that's kind of the issue with people. Now, our thinking is, okay, can we get something that is kind of something that can kind of give you the best of both worlds, something that is as flexible as a person, right? It can do all the ingredients, it can do all the portion sizes, but it's also as performant as a machine. And that's kind of going back to this slide. That's really where software and AI comes in. The innovation here is taking a lot of, frankly, off-the-shelf hardware, like a robot arm, CPUs, GPUs that NVIDIA is making, cameras that Intel is making, putting them together in the right way. But then really the core heart of it is really these AI models that allow the system to be very flexible. And we kind of believe that the companies that embrace this are the ones that are going to outperform their competitors from a quality, consistency, performance perspective. It's strategic is what we have found for many of our partners like Cafe Spice. So what does the system actually look like? This is kind of what we provide. We provide a kind of, we call these chef modules. These chef modules are the same footprint as a person. They can just slide onto the line. That's another kind of key kind of point to call out. We don't need to have retrofitting. You know, if you think about like a multi-head scale, you got to bolt the thing to the ground. It's a big construction project. It's risky. If the thing fails, your line is down. Chef is kind of the antithesis of this. It's the same footprint as a person. Deployment is you slide it off a crate and into the line. You plug in 110 AC, compressed air, which of course every food manufacturer has, and you're off to the races. That is the deployment basically. And the whole point then is it's really providing a labor alternative, which is to say it can do almost any ingredient, portion size, container, tray, things like this. It can also do quick changeovers. So if you want to go from, let's say, like one SKU to the other SKU, that's actually very easy. And the reason is that the only thing actually touching the food is the utensil. So you take the utensil out, put a new one in. Obviously, there's new AI models for every new ingredient, but it's a quick changeover. It's not like it's 3 hours. It's more like 10 seconds to go from one ingredient to the other. The result then is that we can be as flexible as a person, we can be as small as a person, we can be as fast as a person, we can be as consistent as a person. And so really we can provide an alternative where that line worker can now be freed up to do a different job at the plant, right? And ultimately allow you as a food manufacturer to kind of continue increasing volume and revenue for that particular line. So that's in essence what we try to do here at Chef. Again, all of this is really powered by all the modern advancements in AI that you all are familiar with. I mean, just as you're seeing these models kind of transform LLMs with like ChatGPT and stuff, those same exact technologies are what are used in Chef. Or maybe around the Bay Area or around the US, you've ridden in a Waymo or a Tesla. That same exact core technology of self-driving cars is what we use in Chef. For us, basically, it's like, how do we pick in a part of the pan to be consistent? Obviously, if you pick, you're going to have a divot. So you need to pick at different parts of the pan, different depths every single time. And then food is organic, so it changes. So we use a lot of computer vision and sensors to be able to dynamically figure out where to pick from. And similarly, on the place side, you know, if there's a tray, we should place. If there's not a tray, we should not place. If the tray is farther, we should place farther. If the conveyor is sloped, then we should place lower. If the conveyor is skewed, somebody bumped into it, we should place farther, et cetera, right? It's really meant to be a more dynamic system than a fixed depositor that has a simple photo transistor that's doing the same thing over and over again. This is the key kind of takeaway I would say here. I think what's happening in food manufacturing, just like general manufacturing, is that manufacturers are trying to get flexibility into the ecosystem, right? We're going from like rigid automation that does the same thing over and over again to now more flexible automation. And that is driven purely by the advances in AI and software. Now, you know, I'm gonna actually turn it over to Virgilio, who's gonna talk a little bit about the background with Cafe Spice. But we've had an incredible partnership together with Virgilio and team, and I'm really excited to talk about that today.
All right, thank you, Rajat. So again, my name is Virgilio Felix, COO with Cafe Spice. We are a food manufacturer of prepared meals. not only do we do branded retail, but we also operate in food service, private label, and co-manufacturing segments. So we do provide services and products to a broad, diversified market. We have a large SKU set, and that was one of the challenges that we were facing when we were looking to build a fully automated facility in Beacon, New York. We've operated a pretty manual facility, about 50,000 square feet in New Windsor, New York, and we were using a lot of manual labor. And with a lot of food manufacturers, they face challenges like labor shortages. We also face challenges with rising labor costs and overhead costs. And yet we have to provide our products of high quality and high food safety to all of our clients. So we have to meet those guidelines. So with our growing demand for our product, we were looking for solutions to really scale. And this is when we met Chef Robotics. Now, as Rajat mentioned, these traditional ways of automating through volumetric fillers or piston fillers, they're more for a small SKU set. In our case, we have over 250 SKUs. So we needed something that had everything we needed to do the changeover quickly. And we looked at Chef Robotics and started really working with their team. We started off with about 4 robotic systems. Their team was they listened to our needs and modified their systems to look at our food components, not the other way around. And we have seen measurable improvements several weeks after deployment. For example, we've seen our throughput increase by 2 to 3 times than what it was with human operators. We were able to reduce food giveaway, which was another issue that we were facing, by approximately 67%. In some cases, human operators were giving up to an ounce away for every 16-ounce meal, and that actually builds over time, and that's a lot of money lost. So we've had a great experience. With our Beacon facility, which is located in Beacon, New York, we were looking to scale and to automate, and that was a series of conveyor belt systems, spiral chillers. So it really made logical sense to bring in the Chef Robotics. And quite frankly, we haven't seen any other technology out there that is really giving us the results that we were looking for. And it's been really great so far.
Great. So we will then maybe ask Paula to remove the presentation and show the video. So Paula, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Samir Malhotra, CEO and co-founder of Cafe Spice. We're a food manufacturer based up in the Hudson Valley, New York. We're here in Beacon, New York at our brand new state-of-the-art 70,000 square foot facility.
I would say that one of our biggest challenges has been staffing. For the past several years, it was very difficult due to many different hiring limitations that were occurring in the industry, which made it quite difficult for us to be able to continue scaling and expanding.
We've tried traditional depositors and dispensers, and it really hasn't worked well for our operations. The primary reason is SKU variety. We service different clients with different needs, and we have a pretty large SKU set and a lot of product mix.
So the main reason we went with Chef was due to the large amount of different SKUs that we had to process. And it gets quite complex when you have to do changeovers when you're talking about CIP systems, augers, depositors, and volumetric filling equipment. So the Chef Robotics really gave us the ability to quickly replace utensils and get high efficiency on the line.
Great. It was a great video, to the point. And, for me, this is, it's really great to showcase both of your companies, because you guys are really on the cutting edge of what it means to be a high growth, CPG company, and you're partnering the company with a robotics company. So, in my view, you guys are sort of like representing the next generation of companies that will basically lead the food and beverage industry. So super excited to start this discussion. So I have a few questions that I'm going to be asking both of you, and For those that are in the audience, please have your questions, put it in the chat. We want to hear from you, and especially as we have two leaders here in the food and beverage industry. So with that, Virgilio, my first question is to you. You mentioned this a little bit in your in the intro in the slide. What were some of the challenges Cafe Spice faced before working with Chef Robotics? If you can be like specific on those challenges, that would be great. You're on mute there, Virgilio.
Okay, absolutely. So before we teamed up with Chef Robotics, we faced several challenges. Some of the challenges were labor shortages, rising labor and overhead costs, inconsistency in our portioning, and food giveaway. It was clear that we needed a way to scale and address these issues without using manual labor or compromising quality and food safety.
Yeah, and I remember going to the old facility, in Windsor, and seeing the number of folks that were a part of that assembly line. Talk to us a little bit about your decision process, right? So, when did you start thinking about incorporating some of this automation? When was that, like during COVID or even before, or was it like couple of years ago?
I would say it was over several years, right? So over several years, we were seeing what other food manufacturers were doing with food automation, and we got a lot of ideas from that. We also attended a lot of process expo shows and also packaging expos to really see what was out there. We really started looking and thinking about a automated facility back in 2012. And then over time, the growing demand that we have for our products and our services really pushed us to move into a fully automated facility.
Got it. And as a follow-up, Virgilio, as you're building out the Beacon facility in New York, you had this vision of a fully automated facility. Can you go into detail of what that looks like and what sparked that idea?
Well, so it really started with looking at the way we operated in our New Windsor facility, which is built in a modular design. So all of the processes are almost separate, so to speak. So our production, our prep, our packaging are all separate processes. What we were looking for is something that is fully integrated to cut out a lot of the manual work in between those processes and have a more streamlined process flow to ensure that we were highly efficient and increasing our throughput and ensuring that, the quality and our food safety was, exceeding expectations. So to add to that, so think of, larger batch cookers that will get dispensed. We have conveyor belt systems going into a spiral chiller versus a standalone blast chiller. So now with our Beacon facility, everything is in line and automated.
Great, appreciate that level of detail. Now, Rajat, I want to turn it over to you. What do you see other companies like Cafe Spice using for meal assembly automation? And as a follow-up, is what Cafe Spice was doing pretty similar to what you see in other companies in the space?
Yeah, it's extremely similar. What we see is dozens, sometimes hundreds of humans in a room. I think one way to think about this is like the manufacturers that have low mix or low SKUs, basically a small number of SKUs, they've already automated using traditional automation. I kind of gave that like Coca-Cola, Pepsi example. It's kind of an extreme example, but one way to think about it is, if you have one SKU on one assembly line, great, that's solved using traditional automation. Like if you're, or maybe another example, like you're making yogurt, like this line is just making this kind of yogurt all day long. That's kind of a solved problem. And so those manufacturers that could have automated using kind of traditional automation, whether that's, we talked about a few examples, but there's a bunch of other kind of examples, whether it's vibratory feeds or conveyance-based dispensing or multi-head dispensing or what have you, that has been done. So at this point, what we have found is that almost all the kind of high mix food manufacturers are actually almost entirely human. Now, the nuance I would add here is there are some manufacturers that use things like sauce depositors, which sometimes work and sometimes don't. Sauce depositors are obviously something that the depositor can do the sauce, but sometimes manufacturers even might not use that kind of equipment because the time it takes to clean. Some of our customers might have 15 changeovers per day, and if that's the case, then even if your sauce depositor can do the sauce, it's not really tenable because it takes an hour to 3 hours to clean it. So you'll need a bunch of sauce depositors that are just sitting around. So they actually end up using people anyway. So I think it's actually extremely similar to what we saw at Cafe Spice across the board.
Got it. And as a follow-up question to you, Rajat, like what percentage of food manufacturers that have a high level number of SKUs actually use technology like yours? Like ballpark, is it 5%? Like just to give an audience a ballpark estimate, like how backwards is the food manufacturing facility? Anything you can share there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very small. I don't know a percent. It's probably around 5%, 1%, honestly, even, especially if you think globally, right? Cafe Spice is definitely like an innovator here, right? They're really pioneering, which is extremely commendable. But no, I think most companies we talk to, it's very manual, and frankly, like it kind of makes sense, right? Like the way to think about this is AI and software is only finally getting at a point, getting good enough that it can actually deal with high mix. On top of that, there's a lot of other technical kind of innovations happening. Obviously, you're seeing all the AI improvements with ChatGPT. GPUs are getting really cheap with, as you're seeing with NVIDIA. Collaborative robot arms is another big trend. Now that's like 5 to 10 years, maybe I would say, but it's really finally kind of like setting in that this idea of like, hey, you don't need guarding. You can just have humans and robots side by side. That's a very new idea. RGBD cameras are getting really cheap with companies like RealSense, for example. So I guess what I mean to say is all of these forces on the technology side are very recent. It's not like it's been around for a decade. So like last few years, we've kind of seen all these kind of technical forces kind of coming together. And I think that's really where Chef was able to kind of say, okay, well, let's leverage all these technical innovations and then apply it to the high mix food manufacturing industry. So it's not, I think what we'll see is that as there are pioneers like Cafe Spice, others are going to say, wow, like it's working. Let's kind of leverage this technology.
Right.
And on the other hand, by the way, like for companies that don't, I mean, it is, it is kind of like hurting from a technical perspective. I mean, companies that leverage automation have a competitive edge in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I think you answered this question, my next question. And, why is the type of manufacturing that Cafe Spice, why is it such a difficult problem to solve? Anything that you would want to go into specifics there, Rajat?
Yeah, I think it's just the changeovers, right? One way to think about this is like, if Cafe Spice was just doing, line 1 is just going to be doing rice all day, or it's going to be just doing mac and cheese all day, what have you. Then, you can actually imagine getting, okay, let's get a custom made depositor of some sort. You try lots of different kinds of depositors, and perhaps you can make it work. That's obviously not the case, right? As Virgilio has called out, they have a lot of different SKUs, and so that's not really tenable. By the way, like, why do they have a lot of SKUs, right? Any manufacturer you talk to is going to want to have less SKUs, right? It's good for manufacturers as well. Why do they have lots of SKUs? Well, it's because you and I as consumers want that. They want choice. When we go to Whole Foods, when we go to Costco, when we go to the grocery store, we don't want the same meal every single day. We want a lot of variety. And by the way, like that's only increasing, right? Now you have gluten-free meals and vegetarian meals and vegan meals, what have you. So the consumer demands variety. And if the consumer demands variety, then manufacturers have to step in and provide variety. Well, if they want to provide variety, well, traditional automation doesn't work. And so you got to use people. So that's like one broad strokes idea. The other idea I'll just call out is for Cafe Spice in particular, there's particular ingredients that are just very hard for traditional automation. So imagine a curry. These curries have meat suspended in them. And you can imagine, like, you can separate out the meat from the curry, but that's not really tenable from a culinary perspective. And traditional automation is just going to kind of clog up and not really handle that curry very well. It's going to like mangle the curry before it actually gets to the end meal. So I think it's the variety. Both of those things kind of coalesce, and that's kind of what led to traditional automation not really being able to be tenable here.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, because Our meals, they do contain particulates, and these particulates are different sizes. What we're trying to process these components without jeopardizing the integrity of that product. So we cannot shear it. We don't want our chicken to shred. We don't want our chickpeas to just turn into mush. So quality is top of mind. So that's a very good point. And that was one of the challenges where with the SKU variety and with the different types of components and particulates, we needed to ensure that it was not going to be jeopardized in the depositing and assembly process.
Got it. And Virgilio, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. So, Rajat mentioned changeovers. Talk to us about kind of the impact that a changeover, like if you didn't have an automated process, the impact from an efficiency perspective, how that affects the throughput, how that affects the efficiency. Can you walk us through like the impact of a changeover, and whether it's 2-hour, 3-hour delay, just to give a sense of those in the audience?
Absolutely. So currently in our circumstances, we're operating in 2 shifts. We count every shift as 7 hours because we do take into consideration giving our employees lunch breaks. So we have 14 hours to produce our meals. Now, changeovers traditionally could take at 45 minutes to 1 hour in between meals. Depending on our production schedule, we can lose up to 25 to 35% of time to produce. In addition to that, we need to take into consideration allergen changeover. We have to wash down in between products. So all of that takes time. With the Chef Robotics, we're able to do that in a matter of minutes. As Rajat mentioned earlier, you're essentially swapping out a utensil. In terms of changing the parameters for the different meals, they're preloaded into the systems, and the operator will go to the HMI and basically go to the next meal, which makes it very simple and very straightforward. So changeovers were reduced from approximately 45 minutes to an hour down to about 5 to 10 minutes max.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And the other point that you mentioned is just how consumers tastes are changing, right? And so the ability to be able to add ingredients and change sort of the composition of a meal, this is likely going to increase even more in the coming years. And so that ability to be able to make those changes in 5 to 10 minutes, I can just imagine just the efficiency that it comes with that. So super interesting. And Virgilio, you mentioned this next question is to you. As you were looking at various options out there for a robotics company, what made you ultimately come to a decision of working with Chef Robotics?
Well, so, as mentioned earlier, these traditional depositors don't really work in high SKU environments. That's one thing. The other thing is that we needed to ensure that the components were not being jeopardized during the process. I mentioned having particulates. We do things with chicken in a sauce, vegetable in a sauce. We use whole real ingredients, and we want to ensure that the quality meets what the customers are looking for. What really drove us to work with Chef was not only their systems, but their approach. So they listened to what we were looking for. They were very cognizant of the type of challenges that we were facing. In addition to that, what we really liked about the system is the data analytics that comes with it. Because not only were we able to address, the depositing and ensuring quality, but also measuring. So now we have granular data on every deposit for every meal, which helps us look at trend analysis and make better business decisions for future products and processes.
Great. And one question that comes to mind is, the manual part of it. If it was a human worker, the portions could vary, right? Talk to us a little bit about the savings now that we, if using robotics, having that level of accuracy, has that led to decreased waste, or just and anything there that you could talk about from a food waste perspective, where having Chef Robotics help decrease that level? Anything that you can share there?
Absolutely. So with human operators, the issues that we were having was with food giveaway. So we were giving more product away than we should, right? We always go a slightly overweight in order to meet net weight standards. So if we're doing a 16-ounce meal, we're aiming for more 16.10 ounces. But in some cases, the employees were giving away up to an ounce, and that was costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars. In addition to that, when you use a piston filler or a volumetric filler, there's always product left in the line. So what we were seeing was anywhere from 10 to 20% just going into the garbage because it was stuck in the lines, right? You can't really get that squeezed out of the system, so to speak. So we've seen a significant amount of savings, and it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that's a big number. And Rajat, as a similar question to you, like from a maintenance perspective, right? Like talk to us a little bit about how often the machines have to be maintained. Are we and how does that affect the processing and manufacturing process?
It's a good question. And I think actually like the foundation, I think to answer this might be worth talking about our business model actually, which is a little bit different than what most manufacturers are used to. It's actually robotics as a service, which is to say there's not actually a big upfront fee as there is usually for automation, but rather it's kind of like a annual fee that our partners are paying. Why do I call that out? The reason I call this out is because, first of all, it's really driven by the software nature of the product. But second of all, it also kind of takes into consideration things like field service and preventative maintenance. So I think one way to think about this is Chef is almost all off-the-shelf hardware. Like we are not really at core a hardware company, right? Of course, to make food, you need hardware, but we are not innovating an immense amount on the hardware. We are definitely designing our utensils. We're integrating the system together to make a useful product, but it's mostly off-the-shelf hardware. What does that mean? What it means is that each component is actually quite reliable. It's like these robot arms, for example, they've been rated for 30,000, 40,000 hours of mean time before failure. So, they're not breaking anytime soon. Same thing with a CPU or a GPU or a camera, right? Or a weigh scale. These are very robust components. So, what we found is that there's actually not a lot of failures that we see from a hardware perspective. Failures that might happen, frankly, are software, because that's what our team is innovating on. The good thing with software is that, of course, just like Salesforce or HubSpot or Dynamics, you can remotely update it, right? And that's essentially what we do. We have a 24/7 kind of hotline, and anytime anything fails, our customers can kind of instantly reach us, and we can quickly patch something, fix something remotely. And we can SSH into the systems and fix anything remotely. So frankly, that actually takes care of most issues. In addition to this, of course, we do preventative maintenance as part of the service. So we'll visit the plant every bit of time, and we'll kind of make sure everything's working well. The final thing I'll just call out here is and I think Virgilio can attest to this, I think our just mentality, our culture is one of customer success. Like we will live at the plant, frankly. Like we've been living at the Cafe Spice plant for months now. And we will do whatever it takes to make Virgilio and team happy. And that's just kind of the culture, we want to make our customers really happy, and so we'll do that. And so it's kind of yes, there's something that we're formally required to do, if you will, but we don't care about that. It's more just okay, let's do whatever it takes to just make sure Virgilio is happy. That's our mentality.
I can attest to that, definitely. There has been teams on site. They have been very responsive. We're also growing as a company. We're looking at ways to improve our product, improve our quality. And when we need to make adjustments, we've seen a very quick turnaround from the Chef team to really get it done. So we've been happy with the service. As a food manufacturer, we are trying to exceed the expectations of our clients, and Chef Robotics as a partner is trying to exceed our expectations, which is highly appreciated.
Great, Rajat. I love what you said. RAS, or robotics as a service. That's definitely something that you guys do. And Virgilio, I just, going back to your point, your earlier point, once you decided to work with Chef Robotics, like, talk to us a little bit about what the deployment process was like, and and the speed to full deployment. Can you go into more detail about that?
Yes, absolutely. So the deployment process was very straightforward. We met with the chef team. We laid out the scope of what we were looking for. We shared details of the type of products and components that we make, the net weights, the type of packaging materials we use, and shared some information of our packaging sealing machines. And then we collaborated for a few weeks on designing the parameters. That was done primarily off-site. Then the robotics showed up in a crate. We just basically rolled them out. The installation process, very straightforward. We're talking about compressed air, we're talking about electric, and connecting them to our Wi-Fi network. Then we did some testing for about a couple of weeks, just ensuring that the deposits were meeting our requirements. And shortly thereafter, we were off to the races. So I would say the deployment period was approximately just like 4 to 6 weeks. And then we really started moving forward, and we started seeing measurable improvements very, very quickly.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I would have expected a longer deployment process, but to have everything deployed in 6 to 8 weeks is, it's surprising and it's quite amazing. Question for you, Rajat. Was there anything surprising about the Cafe Spice meals, or any specific challenges that you faced when you started to work with Cafe Spice and Virgilio and his team?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were definitely a few challenges that we faced. I think one of them to call out is that, with the vision of this fully automated plant, the team at Cafe Spice had set up these kind of indexed assembly lines. And so one of the things we had to do is actually kind of integrate with that assembly line, is a pack line assembly line. And so as soon as kind of the conveyor is indexing, chef gets a signal, and then we can deposit. And so that was an integration we had to do. It was kind of like a three-way partnership between Cafe Spice, chef, and Packline, which was a really nice experience, actually. Because it really, like, if you were to visit the plant right now, I mean, it's like magical. It feels like a clean room. It's like it's like beautiful. It's like all automated. There's actually, it's just awesome, right? It's like very clean. It's very food safe. It just looks magical. And so I think that was the beauty of that partnership. Another thing that was hard, frankly, is these curries. It's a really important ingredient especially in Indian meals, right? It's like the foundation of an Indian meal. So, and as Virgilio called out, like, it's really important that we don't kind of crush the particulate. So, we had to kind of come up with a lot of custom utensils where we can kind of scoop the right amount such that it's the right balance of sauce and particulate, right? But then when we place, so that's the picking side. And then when we place, we have to place such that we minimize spillage as well, because if there's spillage, then there's trouble sealing and things like this. So we had to develop quite a bit of actually hardware and software to actually make that possible. But it's a really kind of exciting challenge, honestly. And I think, again, kind of shows the spirit of the partnership. Like, this was novel work we had to do, and that's totally fine for us. Like, we're totally willing to do novel work for great partners like Cafe Spice. And again, it's just the nature of customer success for us, I think.
Great. There's we have one question from the audience, and this is really about robots work in concert with human workers. Rajat, can you explain what it means, how your robots work alongside workers safely in the production line? And as a follow up, how do for Virgilio, how do the workers feel about working with robots? It's probably something that is still somewhat foreign, but anything that you could share about that. But Rajat, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the crux of this is that the robots are collaborative. So just to kind of just call out what that means. Most robotics to date have been industrial, which is to say, if you put your head there, your head is coming off, right? I mean, they're extremely dangerous. And so essentially you need hard guarding around the robots. So if you were to go to a car factory, if you were to go to like the Ford factory, let's just hypothetically say, you see lots of robots. They've been around for 30 years, but they're all kind of guarded, and they have different sensors around that. The idea of a collaborative robot is a simple one, which is that each of the joints, a 6 degree of freedom has 6 joints. Each of the joints basically has a sensor which can feel the force it's facing, basically. And so basically the robot will protective stop. It's a safety mechanism when it feels a force around 15 kilograms, right? 150 newtons or so. So that's essentially the core foundation of the safety mechanism. It'll basically stop if you like accidentally touch it or bump into it, something like that, right? The second part of this is that, of course, our utensils, we've done a lot of work to make sure they're also kind of collaborative, which is to say in the absolute worst case that somebody accidentally kind of gets their finger inside the utensil or something, it can't really hurt them. It might pinch a little bit, but it's not going to like, hurt you in any meaningful way. It's not going to take off your finger or take off your skin or anything else. It'll just be a small pinch, right? That's essentially it. So we've done a lot of kind of third-party risk assessments around the whole system to really verify that it can be safe to use alongside a worker. One actually simple example, just to kind of highlight this, is, of course, to use Chef, you need to refill the system when it's out of an ingredient. So if you recall some of the videos, there's actually 2 pans side by side. And the intention here is that as soon as one of the pans is depleted, the robot will actually autonomously pick out of the other pan without any downtime, right? It just kind of switches over. And then it'll send a notification to the water spider, the refill runner, right? And that person will get a notification on the HMI verbally using a alarm, but also via stack light. And they can kind of very simply pull the pan out. And when they're pulling the pan out, they're actually not entering the workspace of the robot. There's virtual walls as well, in addition to all the things I talked about to make the system safe. So I think that's the kind of foundation of the safety case for Chef. We've done a lot of work with the third-party risk assessment to validate this. And of course, we've not had any safety incidents to date. And we're going to make sure we don't ever have any ever.
Great. Virgilio, anything that you would want to share?
Yes. So first, our initiative for automation was not to displace employees. We wanted to enhance their jobs. We've been very lucky and grateful to have a good team that, a lot of our employees have been with us for many, many years. And working with the staff members on a day-to-day basis, we know that they're capable of more. So essentially, we have, by implementing the Chef Robotics, we have moved them away from these repetitive, kind of mundane tasks to more enhanced tasks, right? So a lot of our staff members moved to machine operators. Some of them went to our FSQA team. Some of them went into our maintenance workforce. A lot of them shifted over to production cooks. So generally speaking, the outlook with the robotics has been great in our organization. I think it's important, and Rajat and Chef really helped with this, is the messaging, right? It wasn't that, hey, here are these robots, let's just move forward. We gave our team a heads up. They were part of the process. They were part of the design. We incorporated them in our planning process so that when the robots did show up on site, it wasn't a surprise. A lot of people took ownership and they wanted to see it successful. And it's been great. And, it's really elevated our staff members in various ways.
Great. We have a related question from Keiko here. And the question is, how much of a labor force reduction has there been, kind of ballpark, from pre-Chef Robotics and now with the Beacon facility? Anything that you can share there?
So we haven't necessarily reduced our workforce. We are just not in a position where we need a lot more workers. So we were able to just move people around into these different positions. We didn't reduce our workforce. We still intend and plan to increase jobs because there's a lot of other things that we do because we're growing as a business. So yeah, we didn't really reduce anybody. It's just lowered the pressure of hiring new people.
Great. Next question here is about food safety. So, and I think I can ask you both of this. Like, talk to us a little bit about how Chef Robotics has helped with improving food safety? And then Virgilio, for you, what has it been like for, for inspections and just overall food safety in general? Like, what's been the result after implementing this automation?
Yeah, I can take a first stab. So I think we definitely designed the system to be food safe since day one. And we worked very closely with some of our early partners to design the system to really meet their food safety requirements and of course, also NSF requirements. So I think a few things to call out. One thing that's really nice about Chef is that the only food contact areas are the utensil and the pans. The pans are obviously off the shelf NSF rated pans. The utensils are easily removable. You take out 2 pins, you pull them out. They're toolless, by the way. You don't need like any kind of tool to remove them. And of course, they're made out of food safe material, which is food safe Delrin, and they're food safe manufactured as well. So that's actually the foundation of it. There's only 2 food contact zones. So, if you want to do a changeover, take the utensil out, take the pan out, new utensil, new pan, that's it. The rest of the system, of course, is splash zone. And for the splash zone, of course, we've designed it with all the food safety measures in mind. So for example, almost everything is stainless steel. Everything has like rounded corners, things like this, right? There's no sandwiches where you can't wash between, right? So like there's standoffs between all of the surfaces. We do have a robot suit, and this robot suit is kind of on the 6-degree freedom robot. It's actually sonically welded, so there's no kind of Velcros or buttons or anything where there can be harborage points. It's completely kind of designed to be food safe, and you can wipe it down and wash it down. Usually our customers kind of take the utensils out and the pans out. They might dishwash them. They might have a COP tank, so they might COP them. Other customers, and then the system, they might kind of just spray it down or wipe it down. So again, we kind of designed the system to be food safe from day one, and I think that kind of shows in the results where it's not like you have to spend 2 hours to clean the thing. I mean, it's like a few minutes to clean the thing and you're off to the races at the end of the day.
Yeah, so the cleanability of the system is really good. There's no crevices, there's no hidden areas where bacteria can grow. They're washed down. The utensils is the only direct food contact material when we're processing. As Rajat mentioned, those are relatively easy to clean. Now, in comparison to a human operator, there's a lot more you have to worry about with a human operator, right? Washing of hands, glove usage. They change their gloves often. They change their aprons often, sleeves often. A lot more goes into managing human operators than it does with the robotic systems. So I would say that we've enhanced food safety by using these systems in a very big way.
Yeah, and you answered one of the questions from the audience. Richard, was asking any comments about hygiene, sanitation, and wash down. And so, is it fair to say that like the whole process, it doesn't require as much of a wash down or compared to human workers, and even from a sanitation perspective, like anything that you'd want to shed some more light on and clarity as it relates to the hygiene, sanitation, and wash down process?
Well, we require, our own requirements is to clean and sanitize between every changeover. And we were doing that before, even with the Chef Robotics, but it's just simpler now, easier and quicker, because the way the units are, the sleeves, as Rajat mentioned, swapping out the utensils. We have metal stainless steel pans where we could just take out and replenish with new, clean, sanitized ones. So the process is very straightforward. And in comparison to what we were doing, the time frame is much shorter. And these are some of the intangibles, right? So, we think about some of the benefits, because washing down, how much chemicals we're using, how much water usage we're going through. There's a lot of intangible benefits that we've seen with the Chef Robotics systems.
Great. We have another question here. We have a lot of questions from the audience. They seem to be quite fascinated here, which is great. So Ryan is asking, is there capability from the machinery to deposit meat-based curry and karage-style products? Wow, very specific. Or steamed vegetables and current per minute depositing capacity. So maybe Rajat or Virgilio, anything you'd want to share there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think like we'd obviously have to see your ingredients to kind of validate, but I mean, I think that's the curries, at least the meat-based curries, are actually quite similar to what we're depositing at Cafe Spice. And then I think broadly, like a lot of steamed vegetables and things, like we do a lot of that in production. Again, we can chat more about your particular ingredients and kind of do an ingredient analysis about that.
And Ryan also asked, is Australia part of the rollout plan, in the near future, Rajat?
Definitely part of the plan. Right now we're more focused on US, Canada, and the UK. If there's a compelling opportunity in Australia, we're definitely open to it. It's not this moment, but I think with the right opportunity, I think it could be a great partner to kind of start going into the Australian environment. One other question I think you had asked about throughput. Our base system can do around kind of, let's say, 16 to 20 deposits per minute. We do actually have a now new multi-deposit functionality that has 2 utensils and 3 utensils that can actually go much faster, upwards of 30 and sometimes even 40 UPM. I think it's just trade-offs. There's always trade-offs, as with anything. There's certain partners of ours that everyone wants quality and throughput, but it's kind of like a spectrum between which is more important. So partners like Cafe Spice, the quality is a big part of the brand, and the customers demand it. And so we use a single deposit configuration. On the other hand, other partners are like, hey, like I really care about throughput. Obviously, I care a little bit about quality, but throughput is the name of the game. And so now you can use multi-deposit, which gets you more output, but then consistency will be slightly worse. So I think it's just a trade-off, and I think we can discuss more about your particular application, and broadly, that's kind of how it works.
Now I have a question that probably a lot of folks in the audience are thinking about, and it's about cost, right? And so how should companies like Cafe Spice think about kind of ROI or break even? Anything that you could share about sort of the ROI of implementing this the system, because I can imagine people immediately think robotics are like, wow, a lot of dollar signs. So can you break down kind of the ROI process for companies?
Yeah, and honestly, that's what's really nice about robotics as a service. It's definitely a new model. And so a lot of our customers are not used to it, but I think once they kind of understand it, it's actually a really big win from an ROI perspective. Let me just kind of give you the counterfactual. For CapEx, it's like a lot of our customers are like, okay, well, if we see an ROI in 2 or 3 years, we can get it approved. Chef is basically seeing an ROI year 1, is the simple reality of it. And I think there's a few different layers to that. Layer 1 is labor. Chef is going to be cheaper than status quo labor. Usually we're working in 2-shift operations. Sometimes it's 1 shift, sometimes it's 3 shifts, but usually it's 2 shift. And so from just that station has 2 people working on it from first and second shift, chef will be less than that cost. And now you can offset those 2 people, as Virgilio called out, and allow them to do something else, right? So that's labor. We're saving on a labor perspective. 2 is giveaway. And we almost basically across the board, we are helping our customers with giveaway. And that's usually something we have to demonstrate to you before the robotics as a service fees due. We usually do a site acceptance test to kind of validate that. That's kind of idea number 2. And that's actually really meaningful, because usually what we find is that for our customers, around 50% or so of revenue goes to food, raw material, right? So if you can help with giveaway, it's actually really meaningful. So that's kind of idea number 2. Idea number 3 is basically around throughput. Essentially, we have seen kind of across the board that Chef can help increase average throughput. And that's really meaningful, because if I can help even a few UPM more per assembly line, right? I mean, that's a ton of additional revenue. And in fact, from an ROI perspective, if we can show additional revenue, frankly, it dwarfs everything else. That becomes the name of the game. And so those are the three major ones I'd call out. I think there's a lot of intangibles, by the way. The time it takes to do changeovers, the time it takes to do sanitation at the end of the day, the general cleanability of the system. I mean, humans are sneezing, and Chef is very clean from that perspective. From a food safety perspective, redundant motions you can eliminate, which is like less workers' comp claims. I mean, there's a lot of like other benefits, less managers you need, right? So less recruiting, less turnover. I mean, there's a lot of other benefits, but the three hard ROIs I think that we like to kind of demonstrate to our customers are those.
Yeah, and that's very consistent with I was listening to the PepsiCo earnings, and the CEO was really about focused on cost cutting as it relates to fixed cost, right? And just explaining, you explaining, Rajat, like just the consistency and the throughput. Like this is what's on the top CEOs and leadership teams when it comes to outlook for 2026, and beyond. And so, I think it definitely, you see the value. I could see, the value add right away, just from a cost, labor, insurance claims, food waste perspective. Virgilio, I wanted you to kind of be able to share from a firsthand perspective. Can you validate what Rajat was saying?
Yes, I can. I think he hit the nail on the head. The one thing that I would add, though, when it comes to throughput, yes, there is the ability to increase your revenue. But I think that something that a lot of people miss is that the cost reduction on a per unit cost basis. Because, for example, if you had an employee costing X amount of dollars, let's say a robotic system was equal to that, but you're tripling or quadrupling your throughput, right? Your per unit cost is going to go down significantly. So sometimes that's kind of missed by a lot of people. They're like, well, I'm going to be paying a little bit more for this robotic system or the same, but that per unit cost based on the throughput reduces significantly.
Well, we only have a few minutes left. I wish we had more time because I think there's a lot of audience members that have specific questions. But in the last remaining minutes, Rajat, for those that want to learn more about Chef Robotics and they want to know how Chef Robotics can work with companies, how do they contact you? What's the best process? Please share.
Yeah, so definitely feel free to reach out to me. My email is Rajat at chefrobotics.ai, or you can check out our website, chefrobotics.ai. Feel free to just send a little bit of information about what you're looking for, and we're happy to chat.
And then I guess follow-up question would be for those that want to see the robotics in action, what's the best process? How do they see in real life, like how this works?
Yeah, I think get in touch with us. Reach out over the website, and then I think what we would do is kind of arrange a visit to our office in San Francisco, where you can kind of see the robots. We have a little area. We have a mock assembly line, and in fact, we're even able to kind of test some of your particular ingredients if you're able to send them ahead of time as well.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of today's presentation. Once again, I want to thank Rajat and Virgilio for joining us today, and Chef Robotics for sponsoring today's webinar. Keep an eye on your inbox for the recording of this webinar in the coming days. And once again, thank you all for joining us in the audience today. We catch you next time, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.